Welcome to One Thought at a Time with me, Ant Sahota, where we get curious about what makes us tick. So today I'm joined by someone who you might recognise from a previous episode, but you might also recognise for carrying one of the heaviest names in British motorsport. Welcome, Bradley Gravett.
It's quite an intro. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here again, finally as well.
I know, right? It's lovely to have you back. Obviously,
so
with
much.
Me sort of interviewing you. This
Absolutely,
time.
yeah. Last time we had Ian, didn't we? So it's great to be talking to you. How are you anyway? Are you good?
I'm very good with myself. Things are moving fast paced, like always. So
yeah. This is what it's like in this world. Same with you.
Absolutely. So let's kick things off then, shall we? So, how do you spend your time?
How do I spend my time?
Currently,
working incredibly hard. Yeah, man. It's like we're flat out all the time. So busy. A combination of racing. Business work, social media stuff, just training, lots of stuff going on. So I spend, just all the time flat out. It's great.
Well, we were talking off camera, weren't we, in terms of like the whole sort of run up, like 90%, 99% of the work is done when you're not racing.
Well, that's just motorsport full stop. I mean,
yeah.
You've been in the world yourself, so you'll know this. But I mean, I always say it's 98% making it happen and 2% actually driving the car, which a lot of people don't think it is. A lot of people think it's the other way around, but actually, a lot of it is actually financing and making it happen. So there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes that people don't understand. Yeah.
So what bit of advice would you, if you could give a bit of advice actually, so just sort of hit it off, what bit of advice you've learned so far?
I've always said, I've had this question before actually, and I've always said with people that you've just got to jump, and that's always been the word that I've used. You've just got to jump and
do it.
Literally, just do it. Yeah, I mean, because if you don't make that first step, it's not going to happen. You've got to actively go out there and make it happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, it's one of the biggest things about it. Could be motorsport, it could be anything.
Exactly, and you got to go out there, and whatever that is for motorsport. So I get a lot of people, how do you get into the sport? Well, first thing you got to do is you got to find a race team.
Yeah,
probably first thing you got to do is find a sponsor. But actually, you got to actually get yourself to a circuit, meet those people, start making connections, and actually jump and make it happen.
Yeah, it's more like learning the industry is key actually.
I think it is.
That step of going, I want to get into something and doing a bit of research on how to kickstart that sort of process, and then you can go, well, I need to find a sponsor. Oh, I need to do this and I need to do that.
And it's like any industry and any business industry as well. Once you start turning those pages, you start realizing the things that you need to do. It's very easy to, motorsport's such a small community and lots of people know everybody. So once you start making those connections, you realize that one leads to another. Next thing you know, you're in a Formula 1 car. Yeah.
Is that the dream then?
No, never. It never was actually, to be honest with you. It was always tin tops for me, what with the dad connection and touring cars and that sort of thing.
Which we will get on.
We will
next,
get onto, I'm sure, no doubt. We've got your list of questions there.
Oh,
this is quite a long one.
That's really good. So one of the things that I was going to ask you is, what are the sort of the key aspects or the key moments that have brought you to where you are right now? So this current moment. So.
We're here today, you mean?
Well, I'd say just here in general, in terms of your motorsport, in terms of where you are in your career,
So it's been a long process for me as a driver. Lots of people think that because of Dad, and it is relevant because of what he did, and he was a professional racing driver for 16 years. He won the British touring cars. Because of what he did, a lot of people think that I kind of fell into it and that it was sort of handed to me.
Right.
I kind of didn't really. He always discouraged me to actually go into it. And now I kind of know why that is, because
he totally said
he totally said no way,
really?
It's brutal. Like it's a brutal sport. Like 1 minute you're driving and the next minute you're not. Like it's like, and you get it. I know you get this. So he discouraged it, and it's only sort of in the last couple of years I've understood why. And 2007, 2008, I raced cars. You could say professionally, but we paid to play, so we raced cars, whatever. In the British Championship, 2 back-to-back championships in 2007 and one in 2008. Went pretty well. Probably needed a third year, but of course 2008 came, recession, and then, we sort of pulled the plug on it. And it was the right move to do at the time. Obviously, you've got to get your priorities in the right place. For me, as a 13, 14-year-old, that was all I wanted to do. So for me, I was absolutely gutted. And I wasn't ready then as a person, and actually more as a businessman to make the step to where we are today. I mean, the money that we have to find to run the car, and it's still a pay-to-play sport. It's huge. And you have to be a businessman to understand that, and you have to have the right mindset to understand that. Lots of people think motorsport's like football, for example. and you get scouted by a team, and then you go through the ranks and you end up playing in the Premier League or whatever it happens to be. Motorsport's not like that.
On talent.
On talent, yeah.
On talent,
I mean,
you can rely on your talent in somewhat shape or form to allow you to carry yourself into the sport.
Exactly, and to a point, there is a degree of talent with motorsport, and it's obviously, you need to be able to drive the car, but ultimately, if you can't afford to get into the car, anyway, long and short of it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the cases, if you can't, to the viewers, if you can't actually afford to get in the car, then how can you?
How can you get the talent? So you're always chasing your tail with it. Long and short of it, I spent quite a long period of time of my life desperate to go racing. I mean, I remember Dad's a member of the British Racing Drivers Club, BRDC, and we used to every now and then go to Silverstone, and I just remember vividly. I used to, you'd see the support races to the F1 or the touring cars then, and I wasn't involved in any way, shape or form other than son of.
Right.
And the hairs on the back of my neck used to stand up. And I used to say to Dad and my partner as well, I just used to say, I want to go racing. Like, it's what I want to do. And like, I knew it was going to happen, but it was just a question of when and how was it going to work. And I still get those same sort of like, when the hairs on your arms stand up and you go all like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I get that same feeling now, and I only get it when I watch the touring cars go out. So
really,
I'm in the support series, so we're not touring cars, we're the one below, but we follow the touring cars around. And when they go out and you hear the engines going and the gear changes happening, and I still get that same feeling that I got even before I race,
Yeah.
And to answer your question is that I had to make an active decision to do this, right. And I had to get to a point financially in my life where I could make that first initial payment on a test.
Yeah.
To which I did in a Mini.
That first step.
Yeah. And it kind of all spiraled from there, really. And it's not been easy getting to where we are. I mean, I'm now quick. I'm now running at the front, but for the last 4 years, I've been heading some challenges that I've had to overcome. Some with talent. I've always had, I would say, pretty good driving ability, but I've definitely moved on in the last probably 18 months.
So you've been focused a lot on the mental side as well.
On the mental side, yeah. I've been working with a company called Thinking It Better on that mental side as well, and that's made a huge difference. But initially, we had to make that decision I had to make that decision to do it, and then we had to find a network of people to support that, which is how we've got there today.
Well, it sounds like there has been a lot of key moments, actually. Like,
there's been a lot.
The business side, if that be mental side, if also that be the financial business side.
And all these things come at you when you don't realise you need them. Like I met Ian, who isn't sitting opposite me today, no. And Ian's been great, but I didn't know I needed that until I had it, and then when I had it, I'm like, I needed that.
But again, it goes back to the learning, doesn't it, of the business of it all.
It does.
And just learning how to, you're growing in different ways, and how can I use the tools or use people to allow me to grow in the best way to give me the best opportunities to then reach my goals. And
going back to what I said previously with it being 98% business and 2% actually driving, you that for that 2% of driving that you do, you need to be really good. You need to be really good in that 2%, and like, to get really good in that 2% takes time and a lot of money. So not only do you have to perform off track and be ahead of everybody else and everything else to financially make it work, you've also got to be able to perform in that tiny little window the art of motorsport really, and again, you'll know this, it's about winning with the least amount of time in the car prior to that race. Yeah. So you need to be able to jump in the car and be quick. Yeah. Within 3 laps. Yeah. That's it. That's the goal.
Ultimately, find a way to practice and
simulator, whatever that happens to be.
Which is great these days, actually. But it's still an expensive option.
It is.
Simulator work is still expensive.
It is.
There are a fraction of a cost, isn't it?
It's an affordable way of doing it. But I have a sim, and that was a huge part of my development as a driver. Yeah. But the sim wouldn't have worked if I didn't have the initial experience to visually, and I can. When I drive, I can feel what the car is doing, so I can not only see it, but I can feel it, and that really helps the mindset side of it as well.
You don't get that movement, do you? You don't get that feeling on
your bum. But when you understand, when you've done enough time in the car, you know what the car does at that corner, so you can see what the car's doing on the screen, and then you can react to that as it sounds weird, but that's just how it works to me. Exactly. So like, when you go there, you believe it. You believe that you believe you're there. Like, and if your mind believes it, you believe it, and therefore when you go to the circuit, you're like boom on it straight away.
Of course, and you've been to those circuits before, right? And you've raced, so you. Well, most of the time, but when you do kind of, it's in your body, isn't it?
You
know what it feels like.
You know what it feels like. But the weirdest one, and this was really strange, was I hadn't raced Silverstone National, and
ever.
I hadn't driven Silverstone National, right? And we had our tyre test there last year, so I did some colossal number of hours on the sim round Silverstone National, right? Yeah. And eventually you get to, it's frustrating, the sim was initially, and I just powered through it and kept going with it. And I remember driving down the pit lane in the sim, you go out, and I used to simulate the whole thing. So I used to go out the pit lane, go around, do a qualifying run, do 4, 5, 6 laps, come in, change tyres. You know, so come in, go into the pits, stop, reset, go back out, drive out, warm the tyres up, go through the processes. Yeah, that's it, go through the emotions.
That's really cool.
And like yeah, it is cool, because I think it's part of it, you know, and I even used to come in and do all this stuff, you know. What? So that I won. Do you know what I mean? No, like the finger thing, you know. Yeah. Long and short of it, I drove down the pit lane in real life at Silverstone, and I kid you not, I promise you, and I'm not making this up, I thought I was in my living room. It was weird.
Wow, so you must have done it a lot of times.
Yeah, I literally, I was like, cool, right, yeah. And I was like, no, hang on a second, focus. You're actually in a race car now.
I love that.
But I was quick. I was on it straight away.
So do you feel like, for the people watching it, like it's good advice to sort of jump on the sim just to give you a bit of confidence before the race?
Yeah, I think so. I think the sim is incredibly frustrating, what it was for me at least. Anyway, it might not be for yourselves as and when you get on one. But I think one pushes the other, and you get to a point with it where you just. So I'm in a situation with the sim now, whereas I've got I'll be working, whatever. I'll be under pressure. I'll be stressed for whatever reason. Perhaps it's got a busy day. Then I go on the sim. I wait till I'm wound up like a top, then I go on the sim and I perform.
Yeah, it's like the thing.
Because I'm training myself. Because on a race weekend, right, you've got 40,000 people. You've got, you know, people want you, engineers want you, the tyre guys want you. You know, you've got all these things that are going on. And when you shut that door, you need to be race mode. So I do this thing where I wind myself up like an absolute top, and I go on the sim and I always perform.
I love that. I think that's
within
very powerful.
3 laps as well.
But it's good that you found your way of doing it, and that's also going to get you closer to connection to when you're actually doing it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's it's a definite asset to have. Lots of drivers do have sims these days. Yeah. But I certainly don't need to use it as much as I did when I initially got it, for sure, no question.
Yeah,
so.
Well,
and the other thing about it as well is, you know, the circuits. Once you know the circuits and you break that boundary as well,
yeah, that's true.
You know, there's a bump there. You know, you turn in there, like you just get to know the circuits, and I think that plays a big part in it as well, of course.
Yeah, the confidence, isn't it?
It is confidence
of knowing I've been here before, but in my living room. So that's fantastic. You know, ultimately, like it's a bit of inspiration for people that want to drive.
Absolutely.
You can they are transferable.
They are, absolutely.
So talk to me about your biggest influences to where you are now. So who would you say is your biggest influence so far?
Well, it's got to be Dad, really. I mean, like what he achieved, he raced in motorsport when, you know, in the mid-90s, British motorsport in the mid-90s had serious manufacturer support. There were some numbers floating around, and I'm going to quote these numbers as what I think they were. But I think Renault was spending, I want to say 7 million a car, but I'm going to say 1 million a car. I can't remember if it was a lot of money. It was in the millions per car to race British touring cars.
That's a lot, especially and they were back then.
They were, so you can imagine. I mean, the quality of the sport then was absolutely huge. I mean, I remember as a kid, and I spoke about this in the past as well. Like, it was just. I don't know, it's because you're small, like everything seems bigger.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's probably...
Well, I'm still small.
Well, exactly. And the other thing is, in his day, they used to, in the early part of his career, they had like 5 channels on TV. Like, and on a Sunday, I think it was called BBC Grandstand, that was on, and the racing was on a Sunday between this time and this time. Like, everyone watched it. And all the way through as a kid, like, you know, even before I was racing, I used to sign autographs and stuff at the tracks. Like, if Dad went to a track, like, he's famous at a track. Like, a track, he's not famous, but at a track, he's a bit of a name. And like, I used to look up to, I think, oh, that's cool. Like, that's cool. Like,
do you remember feeling that?
I didn't really think. It's weird because it kind of just. I never really thought anything of it. But like, when I think back now, like, you think people kind of like surrounded yourself around him because of who he was. Like, you kind of, and I sort of remember that, and that's not what I wanted. But I wanted that. I wanted the racing thing. I wanted to be a racing driver, not because he did it, but because I was brought up around it and I saw it, and I just love it.
You felt like you belonged there.
Yeah, it feels right.
You felt like it feels right.
It feels right. Like I was so welcomed by the whole community. It's terrible because I cut corners because of the name, and
but anyone in your position
would do the same.
You need to utilise the name, and ultimately the one thing that I can definitely vouch for is like you've got your head screwed on.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And you also give advice left, right, and centre. And if or anybody else would, pick up the phone and drop you a message, you would always give your 2 pence of advice. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
And I'm more than happy to do that because the more the merrier, really. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and being in that position, it might seem like a godsend, or it might sound like an incredible. Oh, you've just got the name, but it's
but believe me, that didn't make it happen. It just helped with it.
Exactly.
It just helped a bit. But you got to find whatever that is. I mean, whatever tools you've got, you got to wring its neck and maximise that as much as possible.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's
like. I mean, I've given so many examples to people, and off air we were talking about ways to make it happen, and you've got to be really clever with it. You've got to literally. I don't like using this terminology so much, but think outside the box.
Yeah,
literally outside the box. Like,
and one interesting.
Be a bit weird about it. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like we were speaking about before, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because business and the world, it's always ever changing. So what might have worked back in your dad's era of racing is very different to maybe what works now. And in the future, I can imagine you're sort of not reinventing the wheel, but there is that thought process forward about what's going to happen in the future. We spoke briefly about some EV stuff outside, didn't we? About sort of.
We did, and going back to your point there, back in the 90s, 5 channels, and that's all you had. So the TV, the sticker on the car was a really valuable asset to have, especially if you were winning. Like that was worth a lot of money. Now less so, because you've got thousands of channels, plus streaming, plus whatever, probably hundreds of thousands of channels that content that you can consume, and it's not about the sticker. The investment into motorsport isn't about the sticker. It's about how you activate that for that individual, that partner, or that business. If you imagine someone's going to give you X number of thousands to put a sticker on your race car, they're going to want that return back. And as a driver, as a businessman, and actually as a marketeer, you've got to find a way for them to get that cash back and more, because that's what it's all about. It's about an investment into the sport. You both grow, you get more money the next year. Simple as that. The conversations in future years with partners and investors needs to be, right, great, we're doing it. How much?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It's a really, really interesting point. So spitting the conversation now to, you were on, I think it was just before your 2022 season. So what's changed between you being on then on the podcast to you being on now?
There's probably 2 parts to that question, really. There's a huge mindset change, without a shadow of a doubt, but there's also a huge skill change. There's 3 parts and a team change.
Yeah, it's all changing. So a lot's changed there.
A lot has changed. Good. Yeah, if you watch that podcast, you will have seen me sat in front of the race car then as well, all red and blued up with my previous sponsor. That was fun. That was my second. That was just before. I think that was just before my second year in the JCW Championship. So I'd had my first year, which hadn't gone to plan, but I'd accepted it. Which really, I shouldn't have really, and I should have. I should have really questioned why and what happened then. Going back a little bit before then, 2021 was when I started racing. I think that's wrong. My number's wrong.
No, that's fine. Doesn't
2021. I hope you'll get it correct me on your notes.
That's wrong there.
2021 is when I started racing in the JCW Championship. Now that's the Premier. The mini challenge we've got 2, Coopers and JCWs. JCW is the Premier. That's just one step down. Touring cars, very quick race cars, very aggressive race cars. Very, as I say, very quick. And starting that year off really quite well. Actually, Snetterton, or pre-season testing actually prior to that, we acquired the car. Tested it 3 times. All 3 times the car wasn't performing. There was power issues with the engine. At the time, everyone thought I just couldn't drive the car.
The mechanical gremlins were coming out to play. Yeah.
It took a while for people to realise that the car was actually down on power, considerably down on power, 100 horsepower down on power. So it's a third down.
100 horsepower?
Yeah, it was massively down. Yeah, so people were saying to me, it's your first year, you expect to be 10 seconds off the pace? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so, yeah.
So I questioned that, but of course I didn't have the experience or actually then really the confidence to sort of say anything else to it. I knew it was frustrating for me because I knew I had more than that. I thought, I can't find 10 seconds on a lap. We might as well stop now. So anyway, long and short of it, we fixed a power issue. There was an engine issue, it was a wiring issue, in fact, whatever, doesn't matter. But I didn't get any pre-season testing that year. And I went into Snetterton round 1. Having never driven this car, notoriously difficult cars to drive in a very competitive championship, and qualified 12th, right? To put that into perspective, after Snetterton, I was qualifying 18th, 20th, 22nd. I couldn't get anywhere near 12th.
Yeah, so that was my
introduction. I was like, great, we're on it. Like this is mint. This is exactly what I'd expect. I know 12th doesn't sound good, but in a championship like that, we're talking we're talking 0.7 of a second off pole, like just the blink of an eye, and that's pole. So it's, you know, so you understand.
Perspective-wise,
it's
not. 12 sounds a lot, but it's not a lot.
And we ran in the top 10 that weekend.
Yeah.
We had a great weekend. Funny enough, it ended with a wheel bearing failure, so we actually DNF'd in the last round. But I was incredibly happy with that. After that, I couldn't really get the car anywhere near the top 15, and if I did, it was a luck. Really, it was cars falling off, and it wasn't really until midway through last year, really, that I realised that the issues weren't with me. It was more really with the team, to be honest with you. And things weren't being done with the car. And the car wasn't being set up properly. So there's a process that one goes through with a race car. You have engineers and mechanics, and the idea is the driver comes in, names the issues, and the engineer goes away and goes, works out what they're going to do to the car to fix it. Well, I wasn't getting that service, so that wasn't happening. So I had a race car that just wasn't fast, really. Which I always knew. I always knew it wasn't quick because the car shouldn't be snapping at you. It shouldn't be doing this. It shouldn't be trying to, kill you. Really,
your initial feeling was right.
Yeah, this can't be right. Like, there's no way that this car can. There's no way the guys at the front have a race car like this because it doesn't work. It doesn't.
It's not. How can anyone adapt to that kind of? How are they getting?
And for people that don't understand what I mean is when you're on the limit of a race car and you turn it into a corner really quickly. And I'm trying to give an analogy here that everybody would understand, but the car kind of sets, right? And then it kind of flows in with the corner. Like when you get the corner right, it kind of like sets. But what this car was doing is it'd go into the corner, it would set, and then it would bounce. And then you'd end up oversteer, and then you'd go off, and you'd have all these problems. It shouldn't do that. But that bounce costs you a lot of time, which meant I was nowhere. And
that's not just in one corner. That's
every corner. So corner after corner
exactly,
after you lose half a tenth, or even half a second, and suddenly you're like 2 seconds off the pace. And I'm like, I'm not a 2 second off the pace driver. I'm just not. And I became increasingly more frustrated with it. And we got to a point where we parted ways with the team for a political issue, which we changed teams.
And when was that? That was
midway through the 2022 season.
Okay.
So I get onto your point. What's the biggest thing that's changed? So the team.
The team.
But actually, along with that is my belief in me and my confidence in me. And I got into a race. So I went from one team to Excerl8 Motorsport, and we got into the car, and I was like, oh right, okay, fine. So they took the car away, they stripped it to bare, and they were like, right, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. We're talking about an MOT failing race car here. It's a race car. It should be absolutely pristine, and it wasn't.
Right.
And we were told that it was fine, but it wasn't fine. There was issues with dampers, and that's what's causing all those problems in the corners. That's the issue with it. Fix the car. They set it up as it should be. They know what they're doing, and suddenly I was in a race car that actually worked and behaved as a race car for the first time ever. That's the first time I'd ever driven a race car that I knew that it should be. I didn't know that's how it felt, but I knew it was right.
Did it feel the way
it was just like chalk and cheese.
Really?
Like all those issues I had went straight away.
Wow. At
which point my confidence changed entirely because I was like, right, it clearly wasn't me, and I wasn't being listened to. So now it's like so the biggest things that have changed is team and the confidence in me. And when I know something's wrong, it's wrong.
You've learned to speak up in that sense.
I've learned to speak up in that sense. And I think that's the biggest thing. One of the biggest things that has changed for me as a driver is that I can get in the car and be like, right, it should do this. When I do this, I'll turn the car into this corner, it should do that. It's not doing that, it's doing this. So therefore, that setting on the car is wrong. And that needs to be changed. And when you get to a car that's at a base level, you can just make small changes. Prior to that, we're making massive changes to setups. You don't do that at a race weekend. You're there or thereabouts, and you're talking 0.5 millimetre adjustments here and there, tiny amounts. And by adjustments, I mean changing where the tyres point ever so slightly. Not massive adjustments because one doesn't actually know what they're doing. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest change for me. And with that comes confidence and massive self-belief, which is what you need.
I'm just super happy that you made that change. And
that's what I've got now.
That's it. Exactly that. Yeah, I think we all need a bit of that, to be honest.
I'm trying to read it backwards, but I can't.
Yeah. We're excited to see what happens for next year.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, very good. I can't believe how quick this is actually flying by. I mean, we could talk like this for hours, couldn't we?
Go for it.
One thing that's quite traditional on the podcast is that a previous guest leaves a question. So the previous guest, their question was for you: what is your drive?
To do the sport, I would assume.
Okay.
To add to your question, I guess the drive to to do what I'm doing right now? That's a great question, actually. I like that.
Sport or no sport, what's your drive?
Yeah, wow. So I want to win. I want to be better than everybody, and I want to win, and I know I can. That's my drive, and I've had small amounts of that, and it's addictive. It's
like I want more.
I want more. I want more, and I want more, and I want more, and all the naysayers and all those people that you know, I want to be careful how I word this now, because motorsport is a very small community and lots of people get on very well, but there's also falling outs in the sport. And there's a lot of people that don't like to see you succeed and I'm sure it's the same in any professional sport, you know, because they want to succeed. I get it.
Of course, yeah.
But I want to beat them. And I want that.
I love the honesty. And I think the viewers would love the honesty as well.
I want that feeling of actually you've completed it.
Yeah.
And you've done it, and all that stuff that you dealt with and you put up with and you pushed through and powered through and believed in, and you believed in yourself, eventually you did it. And that's it. It's set.
I love it.
Forever.
Yeah.
It's done. You've done it. There is no question. There's no debating it, and there's no arguing it. It's done. And that is just such an empowering feeling as a professional sports person, as a driver. All the stuff that I've had to go through from behind the scenes. I can feel it now. Like I can feel that emotion.
I can see it.
When you get that, the passion.
You're fired up just answering the question.
I want it so bad.
Oh man, and I really hope it comes your way, and I'm sure it will, because like we're all there for you as you get there. So yeah,
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
So it's now your time to leave a question for the next guest.
Why can't you ask me this off air so I can have a plan?
No, fire away, Bradley. Come on.
I don't know. What would I? So leave a question for the next guest. And it's not motorsport related. It could be anything.
Could be anything. Yeah, off the top of the dome.
Oh, and you put me right on the spot here.
You're good under pressure, aren't you?
I'm one of the best, actually. What would my question be? To be honest with you, I can't top the question that the previous guest left me, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Okay, got it. What's the end goal?
Love it. And that's
the question.
I like it.
What's the end goal?
Love it. And then we also want to ask you one other question.
Go for it.
And that is, if you could write yourself a note for yourself 18 months ago, what would it be?
So I've done a year and a half of professional racing at this point. And I would say, in my shoes, I would say, don't be Wally, change teams.
So make a change.
Make a change.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's interesting you worded it like that, actually, because that's actually a thing that I say to myself now. If something's not right, make a change.
Same. It's one of the biggest things that I give. Say if anyone was to say, change is the one thing I think we're all a bit scared of. Doesn't matter your age. When you're 19 to when you're 50.
I think it gets worse as you're older, doesn't it? So I've heard.
Well, yeah, I've heard that as well. Don't want to get into trouble, but yeah.
All that to look forward
to.
Yeah,
exactly. But if you're definitely making a change, I think is a good step forward. You learn.
And it's just having the confidence to do that and actually believe in yourself. Make the change and racing, business, whatever. Make the change. If it doesn't feel right, make the change.
I love that.
Because if you don't make the change, it's not going to change.
Absolutely. I just have to say thank you so much, Bradley, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks so much.
All the best for what's to come with the racing, and I'll be there.
I hope to see you out soon as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And honestly, thank you so much, Bradley, for coming on the podcast for the second time.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And once again, thank you for having me. I think you're doing a great thing here. So yeah, look forward to coming on again if I'm invited back.
Of course you are. Fantastic.
I'll hold you to that.
Not a problem. We look forward to it. Cheers, Brad.
Thank you.
Cheers. You've been listening to One Thought at a Time, and our guest this week, Bradley Gravett. If you have been, thanks for listening. So just a quick one. If you like our content and you love what we're bringing to the table, please make sure that you subscribe and you support us, because it helps us in more ways than you think possible. With a simple click on the subscription bar, it allows us to keep bringing you fantastic content and also fantastic guests. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and support us. Thanks.